Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space, 13.80, Inside Midnight. We are back. We've got a live audience if you look in the Google Doc. There's like 3 people reading right now.
Whoa, how is that even possible?
Because it got released on Patreon.
Oh. Yeah, welcome audience. I didn't realize I got a direct link to this article. I can't wait for you to edit it in real time in front of them. Alright. Yeah, this one's a little late because I had a responsibility yesterday. But we're here, and we're getting these out, and I hope you all enjoy them. So without further ado. Dragon Hadrian was starting to get a little bit annoyed. Musashi came for him again and again, his flight path chaotic, as if he were ricocheting off of the air itself, and each time he passed, he cut. Blood sprayed from transient wounds, spilling with the rain the moments before Pan's regeneration triggered. His arms, his legs, his stomach, more than once his entrails threatened to slip free of their cage and abandon him. The sky was made bright with fireworks, the white ribbon of the zigzagging Musashi, and the countless blue flares of Gemini railgun. Dragon blasted the entire area around him, hoping to strike Musashi out of the air, but the full moon was too fast, still too fast! Why doesn't he use his fucking fuck you move?
Because, what do you mean?
The one he used against, I forgot its name.
Well, you could just not attack him.
The dinosaur?
Yeah, you could just, not go into it.
Right now, even with his senses infused to their utmost, Dragon Hadrian could only strike his enemy's after image. This wasn't right. He'd already confirmed that this ability of Musashi's was unstable. The first attack had been absurdly fast, the second impressively, and the third only slightly faster than normal. The benefits of his reckless power should have worn off long ago, so why had he sped up again? Musashi had returned to a speed at a midpoint between his first and second strike, and that was far too close to absurdity for Dragon's liking. His mind raced, trying to figure out the trick to it. Was this an aether burn after all? No. If it was, Musashi's body would have collapsed long ago. Had he somehow managed to counteract the overheating, a cooling ability? The rain. It was raining. Was that helping to cool him off? No, the rain wouldn't be enough to do that on its own. There had to be something. Aether crackled. Ah, I see. It was the rain. It fell relentlessly on both Musashi and Dragon, battering against both of their bodies. I knew it! He's reinforcing the rain as it comes down, isn't he? But in the instant before it struck Musashi, a tiny tendril of white aether reached out and embraced the droplet. He was infusing the rainwater the moment it touched his body, enhancing its potency as a coolant, allowing it to reduce the strain of his ability. Under these conditions, he could probably move at this speed for a good while. The two crossed paths in the air. How does he even do that consciously and not automatically? How? How does he have that much focus?
Because he's him.
Okay. The two crossed paths in the air, their attacks barely missing each other, their faces only inches apart for the briefest of moments. Dragon let a victorious smirk spread across his lips. Musashi's eye widened in alarm. You know I know, don't you? That's right. You understand well. If I know how you're doing it, I can just stop you from doing it. Gemini railgun! A sapphire aurora erupted outwards as Dragon spread his aether, covering the area that both he and Musashi were fighting in. Immediately, the air began to rapidly flash blue again and again, each individual raindrops being recorded into Dragon's... It should be each individual raindrop. Being recorded into Dragon's aether before it could reach his opponent. He'd successfully disabled Musashi's coolant. Musashi blasted away with thrusters, and Dragon moved to follow, recording his lower half and firing railguns from his hands to increase his speed. He couldn't afford to let Musashi put distance between them. If he managed to leave the range of Dragon's recording, he'd be able to cool his body down once more and increase his speed. For the time being, Dragon had to keep relatively close to his opponent. Musashi's aptitude for close-quarters combat made that a risky proposition too, of course, but with his body slowing down again, it was the best route to take. Musashi swung around, whirling a radiant Dragon's head, but he managed to record it away before the blow struck. Flipping through the air below Musashi, Dragon fired a volley of railguns upwards, blue spears of light spiking through the sky. The first 3 Musashi dodged, weaving in incoherent patterns to avoid Gemini Dominion, and the fourth he parried with a twin swing of twin radiance. The deflected shot went wild, slamming into a floating advertisement and sending it smoking down to the city below. As Dragon's head returned, Musashi lunged in again, dancing with his blades as he attempted to resume his evisceration. Clearly he wanted to capitalize on his increased speed while it lasted. Already Dragon could see his skin reddening once again, and the hiss of steam was audible once more. Ordinarily, Dragon would just retreat into Gemini World to avoid the onslaught, but... right now, my body is the obstacle he needs to get through. If it comes down to a pure contest of speed, he still has the edge. He'll be able to get out of my range faster than I can pursue, and if he can get his speed back up to how it was before, I won't be able to counter at all. So I can't just dodge. I need to keep him here. I need to keep him fighting me. Let's go. How much longer could a toy Musashi keep fighting without coolant? He couldn't say, and he didn't have the time to consider it. The facts were that his body was rapidly overheating, and the strategy he'd used to mitigate that had been sealed off. He couldn't take the time to regret that. The only path forward was to coldly accept the new reality and choose to fight another way. So he'd overwhelm his opponent, and then Musashi charged forward, adjusting his path slightly to avoid being recorded, and let loose. He was a spinning top of blades, radiance erupting from his elbows and knees to bolster the ones on his hands. He ignited thrusters on his broken arm to keep it moving, ignoring the pain. Sparks and blood flew in every direction as the dervish that was him made contact with the enemy. Dragon Hadrian didn't take as much damage as Musashi had expected. Rather than dodge, he'd opted to block and parry, fist slashing out with pinpoint aether to meet the incoming blades. It was only 2 hands versus many more blades, of course, and Musashi was still faster, but more of Hadrian's flesh went unscathed than Musashi was comfortable with. Gemini Railgun! Hadrian's fist clashed with Musashi's radiant once again, and in the moment it did, a railgun shot forth from his knuckles and blasted the blade of light apart. Damnation! Musashi went to move backwards, to stop Hadrian from pressing the advantage, but it was too late. A victorious grin was already on the cogitant's face. The speed of his punches increased as Hadrian advanced, each blow accompanied by a railgun to seal the deal, each blow disrupting and scattering the sword that met it. The scale tipped ever so slightly, and Hadrian's fist slammed into Musashi's shoulder. Musashi focused pinpoint aether to block right before the follow-up railgun fired, but even so, the pain was immense. He felt a skeleton creak as he was sent flying backwards, flipping end over end as he tried to right himself with thrusters, white beams spluttering and fading as they drained away. His vision was a rotating blur, city and sky melding into one sickening kaleidoscope. For all the world, it looked like the perfect opening. Dragon Hadrian thought so too. He brought his knees to his chest and kicked himself forward, railguns firing from the soles of his feet to propel himself towards Musashi. Already 2 nuclei of aether were building in his hands, ready to fire the killer shots. For all the world, it looked like the perfect opening. Musashi's flipping finally came to an end, his good arm flailing in the air as he tried to reorient himself. For all the world, it looked like the perfect opening. Musashi's eyes widened as Dragon swooped right in, planting those deadly hands against his chest, ready to fire point blank. For all the world, it looked like the perfect opening. Until a toy Musashi opened his mouth. A thought occurred to Dragon Hadrian in the moment before the trap closed. Why had he been able to overwhelm toy Musashi just then? If he considered it, it didn't really make sense. The entire reason he'd been on the back foot so far was because of Musashi's speed. Fighting Musashi in close quarters hadn't been his first option, because he knew it wasn't his best option, and yet he'd managed to turn the tables on Musashi with ease. It had been because of the swordsman's speed, Dragon realized. As they'd clashed, Musashi had quickly lost much of the speed that had made him a threat. By the end of their bout, Dragon had probably been faster than him. But that had been expected. Having lost his coolant, Musashi would quickly lose the benefits of his ability as well. That had been the entire reason Dragon had done this. Still, though, hadn't he slowed down just a little too quickly? Had Dragon misjudged this? If that was the case, then it begged another question. If the power from those thrusters was no longer going towards Musashi's acceleration, where was it going? A toy Musashi opened his mouth, and the white light of heaven shone within. The force had been gathered together where Dragon would not see it. Musashi sacrificed speed for this attack. He'd allowed himself to be humiliated, and from his shame he'd forged a spear that now waited at the back of his throat. Radiant! Oh, fuck. Almighty! The beam of light blasted free from Musashi's open mouth, slamming into Dragon's chest and sending him flying down into the city abyss below. Even as he saw scorched limbs flying in every direction, Musashi was under no illusions. If he didn't see Hadrian's brain smeared on the sidewalk himself, then the bastard wasn't dead. Given enough time, a near-lethal wound was no wound at all for that man. He wanted to pursue, he needed to pursue, but that was easier said than done. Smoke was pouring from his mouth, and he could taste the metal signature of blood along with it. He'd infused his insides to withstand the backlash, but that had still been a reckless move. He put a hand to his neck, massaging his throat, forcing out wheezing breaths. If he just spent a few seconds... No. He couldn't waste time. If he was falling apart, then he'd just have to finish this while falling apart. He'd thrown too much away to do anything else. Musashi zoomed down into the abyss, thrusters blazing from his feet as he pursued his foe. That was a miscalculation. Dragon had landed on a small control platform amidst the rushing rows of automatic traffic, transporting their cargo across the surface of Azum-Ha. The noise of the rushing vehicles alone was deafening, and the raging winds produced by their movement battered against Dragon's body. He tried to get up, only to find himself unable. How bad is it? Very bad, dead boy. Can't move yet. His eyes slid downwards, and he saw that Pan's assessment was correct. He'd lost both of his legs from that attack, and one of his arms, the other hanging on by a few thin strings of muscle. To be honest, he was surprised he could still see out of both eyes. The heat of that almighty had been intense too. His flesh had been scorched all the way from his chest up to his jaw, leaving a skeletal grin for all the world to see. When he tried to get up, he could feel his skin peeling away. It seemed he'd partially melted onto the surface of this platform. Focusing nearly all of his infusion onto his heart had definitely been the right move then. Already, though, he could feel parts of his ruined body molting away. Already he could feel new flesh growing to replace them. This was a temporary state of affairs. So long as this was temporary, even the pain just became trivia. How long until I can move again? They're not dead, bye. A minute, maybe? A minute isn't great. With Musashi getting his speed back, he'll be able to get down here and finish me off in that time. What was left of Dragon's hair billowed as another line of traffic passed, bulky vehicles piloted by basic auto-brains. If he had lips, he'd have used them to smile. As things were, though, his rictus grin got across his mood just well enough. I remember, Musashi. Do you? Dragon thought, malice oozing out of his delirium as he raised a hand to the distant white star. Back on Kalis Brack, back before all of this, you showed me what strength looked like. I remember you threw a car through someone. That really made an impression on me. He tipped his withered body towards the traffic. Want to see something cool? Gemini Railgun! Musashi fell. If he was able to move freely, he'd probably have been able to reach Dragon Hadrian in the span of a few seconds. With the injuries he'd just inflicted, taking Dragon Hadrian's head would be easy, and that would be the end of it. Of course, this world wasn't kind enough to let Musashi move freely. Bright blue lights flashed from the depths of the traffic valley, and a moment later, cars came flying at Musashi. Like giant bullets from a giant Gatling gun, they tore through space without pause, their black chassis reduced to impressionist smears by sheer speed. Musashi weaved through the hail of wreckage, thrusters splitting his skin as they forcibly pushed his body out of the path of traffic. Radiance blazed from his hands as he slashed and sliced at the vehicles he couldn't dodge, cutting them into clean pieces that scattered on the winds, ripped their fucking people inside of them.
They're automatic vehicles, the cargo vehicles.
Oh, of course.
He was mentioned!
If he activated Quantum King, he could defend himself from all of these attacks without fail. However, that wasn't an option he was willing to entertain. If he activated Quantum King, that meant remaining stationary until the attack ceased, and that was exactly what the enemy wanted him to do, because Dragon Hadrian was trying to buy time. It was obvious. Everyone watching the Dawn contest was now well aware of Dragon Hadrian's regenerative abilities. The majority believed it to be an Aether ability he possessed, enhancing the natural regenerative abilities of the body to the extreme. Personally, Musashi thought it had something to do with the events on Panacea, but that didn't matter. The point was that Itoy Musashi could not afford to stop attacking, not even for a second. If he did, then Dragon Hadrian would recover completely, while his own wounds continued to accumulate. In a war of attrition, this shooting star would always win. His only choice was to snuff that star out. Out of my way! He demanded of the world, pulling his arms in. He slid past an incoming car as he zoomed downwards, and time slowed down. Musashi's eyes flicked to the side. There was a zombie clinging to that car, flayed and burnt and battered, holding on with barely formed limbs. There was a zombie clinging to that car, pointing a finger at Musashi just as it came into existence, sparks concentrating at the tip of the newborn fingernail. There was a zombie clinging to that car, narrowing, electric blue eyes and opening an exposed jaw. It had no lips to speak, but Itoy Musashi knew full well the words that were echoing within that head. Gemini Railgun! Musashi went to dodge, to move his head back. If he didn't, the shot that blasted from Hadrian's fingertip would surely have blasted his brains out. As things were, it flashed past his neck, instead, opening the front of his throat and sending blood spraying out in front of him. Musashi's eyes shuddered in his sockets as he felt a sudden and fatal chill vibrate through his body. It had felt like this back on Ocean Hate, when the man called King had beaten him so badly that his heart had stopped. Back then he'd been able to restart his heart through thrusters. Now he knew Dragon Hadrian would offer him no such leeway. This was it then. This was how he— No! Thrusters flared inside Musashi's throat, cauterizing and closing the wound in the moment it was created. The pain was excruciating, but he embraced it. This agony alone was proof that he was alive. He whirled around, igniting a radiant, slashing at Hadrian as the car passed, but the moment was already gone. The flying vehicle had been sent off course by the recoil of Gemini Railgun, and the wounded Hadrian had let go, floating a short distance away with the aid of his Gemini world. He was a sight to behold. Parts of his body were just meat regrowing over bones, while others had been recorded into fizzling aether. Anyone else would have been dead a long time ago, Musashi knew. Anyone else would have died back in that arena, cut open by the first swing of a radiant. However, Dragon Hadrian had no shortage of ways to avoid consequences. No matter, he'd achieved the distance he needed when Hadrian had been sent flying away. The cooling strategy could now— Oh. He'd been so absorbed in the battle that he hadn't noticed. He'd been so consumed by the finishing blow that he hadn't realized. God had played another little prank on Itoy Musashi. It had stopped raining. Where are you going, Itoy Musashi? Dragon flew through the sky in pursuit of his opponent, a cloud of emerald eyes surrounding him. After managing to survive Dragon's sneak attack, Musashi turned and began running away again. Well, Dragon could imagine why his foe would be panicking. Without the rain, he'd be unable to counter the overheating produced by his acceleration. Without that additional speed, he was at a disadvantage here in the air. So, he was looking for a battlefield more suited to him. Musashi swerved to the side, thrusters blazing white, bringing him towards a large squat tower floating over the buildings below. Waxherd Leisure Center, the sign on the front said. Did Musashi intend to take their battle inside here? Gemini Railgun! Dragon fired off a volley of shots with the cards he still had stored up. Musashi dodged them with ease at this distance, of course, and the majority of them slammed into the building instead, cracks spreading across the brickwork. Kicking off the air, Musashi launched himself upwards, heading towards the roof. You think you can still outrun me now that you've lost your acceleration? Don't make me laugh! One of the emerald eyes zoomed through the air a little too close, and Dragon immediately snatched it up with his Aether. Gemini Railgun! The shot manifested right in his grip. And as the emerald eye was launched across the sky, Dragon was pulled along with it. He let go after only a second, but even that was enough to fling himself into Musashi's path, floating right in front of the full moon. He grinned. Going somewhere? He wanted to say that he truly did, but his lips still hadn't fully returned. Instead, he just threw his hands out in front of him, Aether running between his palms, ready to fire another railgun right into the incoming Musashi's face. At this distance, at this speed, he wouldn't be able to dodge or block in time. Only, it didn't seem like he was trying to. If anything, Musashi sped up, barreling towards Dragon like a guided missile. His gaze was intense, his eyes full of vicious resolve. With spluttering thrusters, he managed to bring his arms out in front of him, ready to meet Dragon's attack head-on. Gemini Railgun, Quantum King! Musashi activated this ability only for a second, and so it was like the flash of a camera as it burst into life, diverting the railgun just enough to avoid death. The projectile scraped past Musashi's face, shattering his mask and sending sparks raining down below, but that was all it did. As shards of metal flew from his scarred face, Musashi wrapped his arms around Dragon, the two of them twisting in the air. As they flipped and flipped over the building's skylights, Dragon sneered. If Musashi intended to come in this close, all he was doing was making himself a bigger... Thrusters exploded into life. They blazed out of Musashi's back, propelling him and Dragon downwards towards the skylight. The shot Dragon had been aiming went wild, streaking off into the night sky, and a moment later the two of them struck the glass, shattering it as they continued their descent. At first, Dragon thought that Musashi simply intended to slam him into the ground, but no, it was worse than that. Now that the skylight was broken, now that he could get a good look, he could see what was directly beneath them. A circular swimming pool. Water. Coolant! The two of them splashed down into the pool, steam and water hurled up from the impact. Toy Musashi had more than just coolant in mind with this maneuver. Episode. At the moment of impact, he infused the water around him, white tendrils of aether spreading out to the entire pool within a few seconds. Hadrian's blue current, on the other hand, only managed to cling weakly to the cogitant's body, exerting no influence outside. That made sense. Musashi had been ready for it, while Hadrian had not. The two of them hit the bottom of the pool, thrusters still pushing them down, striking with such impact that the floor around Hadrian cracked as Musashi pushed him down first. That was simply intended as a restraint, though. He just needed to make sure Hadrian couldn't move. Everything was ready. The water around them was a Toy Musashi's territory. This is cool because it paralyzes like the hot tub fight from Arc 10. Parallels, not paralyzes. The water around them was Toy Musashi's territory. Dragon Hadrian's infusion was being fought against, preventing the use of Gemini World. Now that he put the shooting star in a situation where he couldn't use his abilities, all that remained was the killing blow. Musashi raised up an arm, ignited a steaming underwater radiant, and brought it down towards Hadrian's face. Hadrian's eyes widened as he saw the blade slowly come in. Hadrian's eyes closed as he braced himself for impact. Hadrian's eyes opened once more. Gemini Railgun! And popped in their sockets, as the twin projectiles manifested within them shot forth. They'd just been pieces of scrap from one of the cars, but they'd been the smallest shots Dragon had stored up. Anything bigger than that, and Dragon would have killed himself manifesting Railgun with his own flesh. Even this had been a gamble. The first bolt struck Musashi in the stomach, the second spike in the arm, and their combined force was enough to launch him up and out of the pool. That was too close. Dragon's blood streamed upwards, and he rose to meet it. Musashi roared in pain as he slammed into a wall, impaled by the shoulder against the concrete. He tugged at the metal rod, doing his best to pull it free, but it was in deep, and it was slow work, so for the moment he was stuck. Splash! Musashi looked up. Slowly, Dragon Hadrian floated up out of the pool, legs dangling, head bowed like he was a corpse being displayed at the gallows. His head snapped up, his face had now fully returned, covering the skeletal grin he'd previously bared. Now the only injury on that face were his missing eyes. Even though Hadrian's eyes were gone, his aether tick was still active, an unearthly blue light shining from deep within his empty sockets. Monster. Oh, I want to keep going, but I think my throat's out of stamina.
No worries. Musashi felt a shudder run through his body as an aether ping swept past. A second later, it happened again, the Aether colliding with his own from the opposite direction. It happened again and again and again. This was how Hadrian was seeing us, as he realised. He was using a pulsating Aether ping to keep track of his environment, to keep track of his enemy. You thought you did something there, Dragon rasped, his voice gravelly and grave. Didn't you? It was as he didn't reply to the ghost floating before him. He was fully focused on the spike in his arm, on pulling it free of escaping. On pulling it free of escaping, yes. Even as pain beat its fists against his brain, even as blood oozed from the wound he was opening, he continued to pull. It's a joke, Dragon sneered.
Ever heard of dark humor?
Toes dragging along the floor as he slowly floated forward. If you decided that you're going to do whatever it takes, then you need to live by it. You need to die by it. He raised a skeletal hand, blue Aether dancing between the fingers, pointing it directly at Musashi. The second that arm became a liability, Dragon snarled. You should have gotten rid of it. Gemini railgun. The sapphire death erupted from Hadrian's arm, flooding across the room, aimed right from Musashi's face. His face twisted, his expression twisted in exertion. He roared right back. Quantum King! There was a flash of brilliant white as Quantum King exploded out of Musashi's body, pushing away the projectiles that had been coming to kill him. Not one of them hit, not one of them killed. But Dragon Hadrian smiled all the same. Crack. He'd been hoping that their visit to this place would end like this after all. Crack. That was why he'd fired Gemini railgun at the building. That was why he'd pinned Itoy Musashi against the wall. That was why he'd launched such a telegraphed attack. Crash. All for such a moment. The building shook as it finally reached its limit, chunks of concrete falling from the ceiling into the pool, and the wall Musashi was impaled against giving way entirely. Structure gave up the ghost as the floor opened up, hurling Musashi directly down into the building's bowels. If Dragon Hadrian had been standing, no doubt he would have fallen as well. But he wasn't standing. He was floating, remaining exactly in place, his lips stretching into a grin. Because, for just an instant, Itoy Musashi had moved away from Dragon Hadrian for a straight line of 2 meters.
No.
Brilliant blue eyes bubbled back into existence, and victorious lips formed 2 words. Gemini Dominion.
No, it's not fair!
Domain
He's so
expansion.
busted! Domain expansion, Gemini world.
He's using Unlimited Void again.
Dragon is a fucking binding vow merchant. I hate him. He's so fuck busted! My boy! He's fighting so well! I'm sorry, that Tan is your author. You don't deserve
God
this.
played another little prank on him.
You're God! It's you!
I'm such
You're
a
the
jokester.
breaker! Don't you think it's funny?
Laugh! Why aren't you laughing,
you.
Batman?
Come on, why so serious, Darnell? What's so funny?
Don't you like going in an acid bath? It'll help clean you up.
Alright.
Have you ever imagined what it'd be like if I could beatbox Batman?
Lan, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Lan asks, challenge! Rank the top 5 most evil characters in Aetheral Space.
Nyan's somewhere in there. He's like... maybe 1. No, Henry would be 1.
Okay.
Nyan's 2.
Okay.
3, 4, and 5. I'm doing this from my perspective as like a person with modern human morals.
Yeah.
Shepherdess is in that next 3 somewhere. Absolutely.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Let's say she's 4. I don't know. She doesn't... Number 3 is Luna Lay. He would be in there, definitely.
Yep. I was just going to say Luna Lay,
He's
yeah.
number 3. He's like... his evil does not have as much of an impact on the world, but he's still fucked up.
I think 5's Cadman.
Yeah, I would say he's evil.
Yeah. Here's a really fun one. This is a throwback. You ready for this?
Okay.
Because I didn't realize they were the same ability, but Rurum asks, who'd win, Bradley Wright from Havoc Moon or the Crown?
The Crown, because he also has, like, infusion and stuff. They also have infusion
Yeah, but...
and stuff, sorry.
So I guess you're the champ. That's short for champion.
Well, Bradley
Sorry,
Wright is a
baby.
bit different, because if I remember rightly, his ability was more like, whatever he does, he's talented, he's a genius at it. So it is a bit different.
Yeah, whatever he does, he's a genius at it.
It's
He doesn't have
skill
infusion.
versus, like, strength, I would say, on that level.
Yeah.
So he has
Yeah.
like more ways he could possibly attack. So it's a bit more complicated.
Bradley Wright would just be the Toji in this scenario.
Yeah, he would have a sniper rifle. He would like become an expert sniper.
Yeah.
But he would need like Neverwire or something to get like a kill shot guaranteed.
Okay, so here's the situation. Bradley doesn't have infusion. Aether's rules apply, but Bradley does have access to Neverwire.
He would
Who
win.
would win this fight?
Does he have any
Bradley
prep
would
time?
win? Yeah, he has, let's say he has an hour of prep time.
Okay, he would win then, yeah. Because
Get
he can use the skills of a master assassin to like snipe from a distance.
Yeah, that's true. Neverwire bullets.
Yeah.
Lan asks, were the contest matchups random?
Yes, for the contest itself, there is more like more eyes on that, so they couldn't mix things around like they did for the in-your outer melees. So that was truly random.
Lan asks, how long was Damon Supreme?
Like 3 years.
Alright. Alright, well thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye!